comes the intro.
I think my juices flow all the time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
You know as much as I know.
Right now, we've been able to stuff the stuff.
The curse is broken. NC State fans, finally. Finally.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving.
I mean, that's a triple play.
Wolfpack ain't for soft. It ain't for soft people.
All right, welcome to Law of the Wolf live after dark, after Duke. I'm your host, Joe Giglio. That's Wolfpack great Scott Wood. I improved our graphics thinking you would be excited about the graphics, and now you tell me I'd rather be number 15.
No, they look great. I mean, they're phenomenal. I appreciate whatever font that is. It's a beautiful font. It's got a little double O ring. So yeah. If anybody's been drinking and consuming alcohol tonight and is watching the podcast live,
your eyes are not blurry.
Yeah, it's not blurry. It's just a double O there.
All right, so NC State loses to Duke 79-64. It's funny. In my opinion, this game was lost in the first half. Mm-hmm. You can't win games in the first half, as we saw in Chapel Hill on Saturday when NC State put their best 20 minutes together of the season. But you can lose games in the first half. And I thought, Kyle Filipowski playing 2 minutes, having the fouls that he had, being a non-factor, I thought Duke shooting the way that it did in the first half was enough for NC State. And then DJ Burns being as effective as he was on the offensive end probably should have been enough for a 10-point lead at halftime. And then maybe you want to see what Duke can do and work their way out of a hole like Carolina did on Saturday in Chapel Hill. But instead, Duke comes up with 14 offensive rebounds in the first half of this basketball game. They take a 33-30 lead at the half, and then just kind of open that thing up with about 14 minutes left in the game and really cruise to what you see, the 79-64 win for Duke. Scott, just your initial impressions of what we saw tonight. Some good things to start the game, but really, I just felt like that first half, they let an opportunity to get away.
Yeah, I mean, the hard part is, I feel like this team had somewhat of an identity, probably the first 60 to 70% of the season. Like, you're going to have elite effort. It's going to be a solid defensive effort, and over the last, 5 games maybe. I don't know what the identity is. And I don't know if it's because, and this is very true that, maybe players are starting to feel like the season's kind of at a loss. So you're losing a little bit of maybe what you once got. But to give up 14 offensive rebounds, which to me, offensive rebounding is just willpower, a little bit of positioning yourself in the right, spot. But it was just purely Duke had more effort. Duke wanted the game more than NC State wanted the game in the first half. And yes, I understand that. What was it? A 2-point lead at half?
3.
But that is the reason why they won the game. They set the tone from the start.
All right, you know me. I've been trying to frame what this season has been for NC State and what it hasn't been. Unfortunately, and I know some people have reached this point earlier. I get that. I totally get that, and I respect that. But this is the game that now puts them out of the NCAA tournament. This is the result. Because if they had won today and beaten Pitt, it's a totally different conversation in DC. Now you're in a situation in DC where you have to win the tournament to make the NCAA tournament. That is obviously a difficult position to be in. This team has not shown that it's capable of winning what would need to be 4 games in 4 days. So I think it's fair to say at this point, this team is either going to play in the NIT or they're not. I don't see them pulling a Carolina and not going, but that's how this season is going to end. Realistically, that is how this season is going to end. And I know after 7 years, NC State fans there is a portion of them that is saying, and we'll get to some of this stuff here. And I appreciate everyone for jumping on and joining us here. Listen, there's a portion of them saying, hey, I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to see a different coach. And I understand that part, but I also understand the other part. And part of that is there is a financial situation, and there's also a relationship there between Boo, Randy Woodson, Kevin Keats, and the biggest owner of this university, who's Wendell Murphy, who even in his advanced age is still a little bit of a kingmaker. Okay, so there's a reality there. You have to have someone who's motivated. If Boo chooses to move on from Kevin, they have to have someone who's motivated to provide the $5 million that is owed to Kevin. And you might say $5 million is not a lot. I'm just presenting what the facts are. And the truth of the matter for NC State is financially, we've talked about this before on the Law of the Wolf. Their budget this year, NIL, was about $1 million. Well, that's good for the Atlantic 10 or a mid-major. It's not going to get you to probably where you want to be as an ACC team. I'm just kind of laying that out for you. Okay. So I think what you're saying about where the players are right now, I think is what's most important, because I think that kind of determines, well, what will the decision be for Boo? The players can make this real easy. I mean, they could bottom this thing out, and then it becomes, well, they've completely tuned out. I'll say this: I didn't see that on Saturday in Chapel Hill. I didn't see that even with a 15-point loss in this game. Second half, I did think get away from them, but I'm not seeing like a team that's like, what was your Javi Gonzalez punching somebody's story from one of those years?
Richard Howell. Yeah. Listen, I don't know where they go. I've said it from the start. I think he gets one more year. I'd be interested if whoever's watching, because I've got to take it for a fan base. If you think you do not want him, put a wave or something in the chat. I'd say 90% of the fan base is done, and I think that's
90.
I'd say it's a big amount.
Really?
And that's I think the problem is, I think that is what you're fighting right now. Okay. I think he's going to get another year. I also think, and I would tell you this, the majority of the big pieces that are, control a lot of this are going to bring Kevin back. And I think that's
where I think the disconnect is, Scott.
Yeah,
I think
now, if they I said it today, if they win one more game the rest of the season, I think he's safe.
Okay.
If they lose out, I think you have a legit concern on your hands. I also said, hey, I've said this a long time ago too. Back when they got rid of Mark Gottfried, I'd take this job for $250,000. I would take it tomorrow for $250,000. And I will put it where it needs to be. And I have no problem doing it. So if anybody wants to interview me when it ever does get open, I'd be more than happy to do it. But I don't know. It's just a tough spot, man. I genuinely like him. I think he's a great guy. I love the staff. I've mentioned it multiple times. I think the staff's great. It's just a tough spot, because I feel like, a lot of the fan base as well have not forgave him for the worst season in NC State history. So I don't. Like, even next year, this is my biggest thing. Again, 90% of the fan base, if they're done, even if he finds success next year, I don't think they're going to give him a chance. I don't think he will never get a fair shake. That's basically what I'm saying. And right, wrong, or indifferent. And then the next question is, who are you going to get? I mean,
right. So I think you're right about not forgiving Kevin for 22. That's the year that they go 11-21, and he spent a lot of time that year talking about Manny Bates. And it just sounded, it was a bad look for him. And I do think he did recover last year. I think they made the changes on the staff. And I think that's where, to me, this becomes the issue of what to do next. And I think, listen, I know where the fans are, but I don't think that's where the decision makers are.
Agreed. And I think that's why I've said from the start, look, I say, yeah, get behind whoever it is, whoever is in that chair as a fan, and like me as an alumni, I've got to get behind it, whether I like it or not. You got to get behind it, and I just don't see them making a move unless something crazy happens over the next 3 games. If they go 2 games. If they go 0-2 these next 2 games, I think
5 in a row. Then
I think there's a problem, but
yeah.
I don't see it happening. But again, to say the point, unless they unless they, bring in some heavy hitters in the transfer portal, which is what he's been. I mean, he's been solid at it the 2 years of this portal and NIL.
Well, let's talk a little bit about where this season went wrong, because
Syracuse 55 points in the first half. There you go.
Yeah, no, yes, the Syracuse game was definitely the canary in the coal mine. You have the fight against Virginia. Excuse me, that was the first Syracuse game. The second Syracuse game after you beat Clemson and really kind of poured it out to really save your season, what we thought at the time to save the season, to come home and have the first half and play as poor defensively as they did. Yes, agree. But I look at this team and I don't hate what they tried to do in the portal with DJ Horn, with Jaden Taylor, bringing back DJ Burns, bringing back Casey Morsell. MJ Rice was a scratch-off ticket that obviously no one had any control over. And I think Alec Lauer wrote about this, and I think he's right. I think a big part of Kevin's problem is he either never got to coach the best players that he recruited, or those guys never even got to campus.
I don't disagree, but
you know what I mean? And we go back to Jalen LeCue. We go back.
Who do we blame for that?
Who
are we blaming for that?
With Sadiq Bey, if you want to go all the way back there, I think part of the reason the administration views Kevin this way and the fans view Kevin this way goes back to that the NCAA issues from the end of Mark Gottfried's tenure. And I think going back to 19, where Boo Corrigan's hired, very specifically by Randy Woodson, and it was his job number one was to figure out what was going on with the NCAA case. And I think they both said to Kevin, listen, I just need you to not break any rules. I need you to kind of sit tight and do everything the way that we want it to be done so that we can go back to the NCAA and say, hey, that wasn't us. It wasn't our coach. It wasn't our AD. It wasn't our administration. They kind of tried to do the old wash the hands of it, which is a nice trick by Randy Woodson, by the way. But, to me, I think that's why the administration looks at it and goes, oh, well, he was a good soldier, if you will, when we wanted him to be. It just so happened to coincide with those, the pandemic years where I thought 20, you get scotched, 21, they're not good, or they're NIT, and 22, they're bad. So I think that's kind of where it goes back to. And then last year, the first year of NIL and portal, I thought they had a good team. And I thought they tried to follow the same template this year. But, DJ Horn realistically was the only one who worked out the way that DJ Horn, Middlebrooks, and Diarra. They hit on those three. Even O'Connell to a certain extent. I'm not sure he's an ACC player, though. I'm just going to be honest.
Oh, I think, honestly, and I'll say it, I don't mind the roster. I just, from the beginning of, the first practice I saw, it just, when you need a bucket, who are you going to give it to?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of games, it's hard to give it to a big guy because they can get it out of his hands really easily. They need a offensive weapon out there, especially if you're going to play a Kevin Keat style offense, which is a lot of pick and roll. DJ Burns ain't picking and rolling.
Right.
You got to have an elite roll man that can finish at the rim, or you got to have an elite pick and roll player. DJ Horn is good. He gets to his floaters. He gets to his spots. But outside of that, who do you trust running a pick and roll? There's not anybody. So that's my philosophy is you got to shift your offensive philosophy with what you have, or you have to hit in the portal on the guys that fit your offensive philosophy. And I think he thought Jaden Taylor could be that, but it just, he's very good in transition, but in the half court, he tends to struggle.
Just going through some of the comments here. And here's one that always kind of comes back because, yes, Auburn went to the Final Four. Kansas went to the Final Four. Scott, do you think Auburn and Kansas were sitting tight when all the NCAA stuff was going on? Do you think they were all of their players were there for the love of Kansas battle red and blue, and Auburn Bruce Pearl?
For the love of the game, I'll say.
Come on now.
For the love of the for the love of the game, I will say yes. But
I just see these. Now, listen, I get the point you're making, but all I'm trying to illustrate to you, not you, but the listener here, only thing I'm trying to say to you is why there's a disconnect between the administrative view and the fan view. That's all. That's all. Now here's another good question. Now next year is set up to be worse. Now why wait? Okay. I think same guy. I think college basketball is a year-to-year proposition. To be totally fair,
it is.
If we want to go back to Mark, Mark was specifically fired by Debbie, not for Dennis Smith, not for the NCAA stuff, but the roster kept turning over. And he was losing good players. Like Mark was losing the Martin twins and other good players were leaving. And it was like, well, Kyle Washington, it's like, well, why are these guys excelling elsewhere and you have Maverick Rowan on your team, right? So that's why Mark got fired. But it's ironic now that the coach who probably could help them the most is the man who would have excelled in the NIL era. So,
and I will say that you could finish last in this league outside of maybe a select few teams, and you could turn it around the next year. That's that is 100% true. Like we could all be here like, oh, Kevin's terrible. He's terrible. But he 100% could hit a home run that no one's thinking about in the portal, and all of a sudden, they're finishing second or third in the ACC. That is 100% factual, especially in today's college basketball. I've seen enough, even throughout the mid-majors, that have just hit a home run in the portal and went from worst to first in 1 year.
And it goes the other way. I know I'm sounding like a broken record when it comes to Miami. Miami was in the Final Four last year. They're 6-12 in the league last year.
But again, Miami went all in. I said this from the start. Hey, Wolfpack fans, if we want to go all in on a national championship, just allocate all of our funds to a particular program, and we'll just have a $15 million, football team. But don't get mad if they're not any good. But we'll just go all in. If that's what we want to do, we can go all in. That's just how the day's game is.
I think the frustration with the fan base is this, right? Now you're in year 7. There's no NCAA tournament wins. I understand that. I don't think college basketball is the same as what it was when you played 10 years ago. I certainly don't think what it was 20 years ago. And certainly not what it was 40 years ago when NC State won the national championship, right? I think that's also not to absolve Kevin for his role in all of this. Ultimately, this is a success results business. And while I can sit here and tell you I thought his first team was really good, I thought last year's team was really good, and I thought the team that got left out in 19 and the team that didn't get a chance to play in it was good, 19 and 20. Ultimately, the record says he's never won an NCAA tournament game. That's what the record says. I cannot argue with that. I do think there were some.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's hard to not watch the comments. But someone commented on your hair. Your hair does look phenomenal.
What's going on? Where's our hair person?
I don't know.
Oh, my man, the big dog, Ross. Thank you, buddy. Yeah. Appreciate you.
That slick looks nice.
Okay, so this is the thing though. Like when he can't coach, doesn't matter who's playing under. I say I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I get the frustration. I do understand the frustration. And I think part of this is generational, right, Scott? When you were playing, we're closer to 83, right? We're closer to 87, the last tournament title, 89, the last regular season title. So there's a certain generation of fans who expect, even after all of the darkness of the 90s, to be one of the best teams in the ACC. And I get it sucks listening to Carolina fans, right? I understand that. Duke fans that's the most Duke fans I've ever seen in an NC State building tonight, by the way. Given Duke's not very good this year by their standard, that was surprising to me to see as many Duke fans in the building tonight.
Well, I think that's that's kind of going back to the hardest part with all of it is, if even if they bring him back, again, I'm not on either side of this fence. I like Kevin Keatts. I think he's a great guy. If he comes back, I'm going to be there to support him. If they get rid of him, I'll be the first one to be in line to help bring in the next guy. If it's not me, ... But with that being said, it's just I don't. Let's just do a hypothetical. He comes back, he makes the NCAA tournament, and doesn't win a game.
Okay, I think that's getting to this the concept of the apathy. The concept you say 90%. I feel like that would be like a groundswell. I'll put it at 75%.
Sure.
In the camp of, but I think there is this apathetic group. I think college basketball was the number one sport. Don't let Elliot earmuffs for Elliot. I think college basketball was the big loser in COVID, the sport itself. And I think Adam Silver was going to try to save college basketball by getting rid of G League Ignite. But I don't think it's just NC State. I think part of college basketball was Scott Wood, you played for 4 years. Like
that ain't, but see, that's college. That'll never happen again. You will never see that again. Outside of these COVID kids that are passing everybody. Like the crazy part is I'm sitting there. I don't know, like my games played, games started. Like I have some stuff in there that may never get touched to be beat on record because no one will genuinely love NC State the same way I did. And that's what I don't like. I do not like it. I want kids to come here and have the same genuine love and passion for university that I did. And none of these kids are ever going to get it. No one's ever going to generate that in a 1 year. Here's $150,000, 2 year. Here's $300,000. It just doesn't happen anymore. And that's the sad reality of college basketball that we live in. And you're not going to get any consistency. Again, finish last in the HC. Next year, you finish second.
All right. I'm going to bring in some more comments from the section here and appreciate everyone for checking in here to Law of the Wolf, After Duke, After Dark. I do have to pay a few bills here, though, Scott, because I did see Hayes Lancaster at the game tonight. And the best way to protect your house, bugs inside, maybe there's some mice, moisture under the house, is to go with Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority, bugsbite.com. Hayes Lancaster is a big supporter of NC State. You can help those who help us here at the OG by going to bugsbite.com. And then, of course, cannot have any of our OG media content without Whitaker and Hamer. It's wh.lawyer. Maybe you want to read up on Kevin's contract, which goes through 2028. By the way, that was an auto extension, or excuse me, that was an extension that he was eligible to elect after the NCAA ruling. There was a scholarship reduction, and that's what was written into Boo's contract. So Miles Solomon, Kevin's agent, was wise enough to say to Boo, well, if it's in your contract, it should be in Kevin's. And that's how we are here at 2028 with Kevin's contract. So you need some help reading a contract. You need some help, family law. You need some help with some stray driving tickets. Check them out, wh.lawyer. Maybe you are excited for football season. You're ready to get swagged out. That's Home Field Apparel. Use the promo code OG23 and you will save 15% on your very first order. And Breeze Through, of course, my friends at Breeze Through. I hit up the Breeze Through on the way out of the building tonight. No, it's a little late for the dark roast coffee, but did need some snacks and some drinks. So 17 locations in the state of North Carolina, wherever you are, Breeze Through is there to take care of you on their journey. And Scott Wood, scottwood15.com, scottwood15.com. I've been learning about the mortgage business, Scott, and the number one thing I know is I don't know. So I need help. And when you don't know what you don't know, it's best to ask the experts, and that would be Scott Wood at scottwood15.com. So reach out to Scott if you're looking for a refi, if you're looking for a first-time buyer. He's there for your mortgage needs, scottwood15.com. All right, no transition music necessary because we're here. NC State loses to Duke 79-64. Yes, as some have already pointed out, you're quite obvious by saying they're now not going to be in the NCAA tournament. But the truth of the matter is, if they had gone 2-3 of these last 3 games, they would have at least gone to DC with a chip in a chair, if you will. Now it's win out or you're done. So obviously that's not going to happen. And yes, as many comments have said, the NIT is probably not in play either. So yeah, it'll be difficult for that for sure. So Scott, let's hit some of these comments. A lot of them have been, hey, let's see, now here's one. Here's one that we've talked about, the disconnect between the conversations of the administration and the conversations of fans. I'm going to give you a little story time. You ready? I'm talking to you. 15.
Oh yeah. I'm ready. Go ahead.
Right, so,
Go ahead. I'm ready. I think it's awesome. I'm just reading all these comments.
Okay, so T Underhill says the next guy better not be Will Wade or State will get the death penalty. Okay. First of all, I knew the Debbie cheat code. So Debbie Yao used to be the athletic director, obviously at NC State, and she's the one who hired Mark, and she hired Kevin Keats. She also hired Dave Doran. Debbie's cheat code was the agent. She was the agent helped her get Dave. Jordan Bazant is his name, works for Fox now. Jordan helped her get Dave and avoid all of the mess from when she had hired Mark. Because remember, the search for Mark was messy. The search for Mark gave us the world famous sabotage comment from Debbie. So she learned from that search and she went to Jordan Bazant and got Dave Doran. Well, then when it was time to hire, finally, when she went back to Mark, it was, no, she hired Mark first. There was a mess. Jordan helped her get Mark. Then Jordan helped her get Dave football. Okay. Then she decides when she's going to replace Mark. I thought for sure she would go with a Jordan Bazant coach. Thought for 100% certain. So much so that I went to VCU for like a Tuesday night game up in Richmond. I reached out through Jordan to Will and I said, I'm coming to your game tonight. I would like to talk to you. They coach the game. He wins the game. And he's looking at me like, what are you doing here? I go, you know what I'm doing here. You know exactly what I'm doing here. I said, Debbie's pattern is to hire Jordan's coaches. And he's like, yeah, he went to Clemson and this whole thing. And he was kind of like, yeah, but he's not going to trust me. I got this great job, blah, 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 blah. I said, okay, here's the deal. I'm going to give you my number. This thing works out the way I think it is. I'll be seeing you on a regular basis. Will Wade is who she wanted to hire in this round. Will Wade was going to take the job, but was hesitant only because he thought Brad Brownell, his alma mater, Clemson, the job might come open. When Debbie went and talked to Kevin, Kevin was completely committed. And again, we make decisions based on all of our experiences. So she didn't want it to be, again, I offered somebody, they turned me down, and now it seemed like you're settling for Kevin. When the truth of the matter is, again, the Murphy family, who's also involved in UNCW, really liked Kevin. So that's part of it. Now, what we know from Will is he did a really good job at LSU. However, he got caught up in all of the FBI and the NCAA cases, and ultimately he ended up losing his job. Now, if LSU fires you, we are not talking about a school that dots its I's and crosses its T's when it comes to the NCAA. Okay, hang on. So for him to get fired by LSU, I see what you're saying, T. And I would say to you, I do not think they will hire Will. I cannot get rid of this. I don't think they will hire Will, even though I think Will is an excellent coach. I also think Will is a little bit like the Got Man in that he knew how to pull some levers and work some AAU coaches behind the scenes. Did any of that resonate with you, Scott?
So you're saying we're going to hire Will Wade next?
No, I'm saying no. I'm saying why. And I agree. I'm choking here. Totally choking. So
that's all right. I got no idea which way they're going to go. If I was willing to bet, I'm going to tell you Kevin Keats is going to be here next year.
I agree with you because I think there's a different conversation. Yes.
I also think there's opportunity. Look, again, whether we like it or not, as a fan base, as an alumni, you got to just get behind it, grit your teeth sometimes. But I hope, he can hit up the transfer portal. Levi does a really good job in there. Coach Justice does a good. They do a good job in the portal. For granted, a couple misses this year, if you want to call it that, but I still think they're good pieces. He can turn it around pretty quickly.
Yeah, I don't hate the pieces. What I'm saying is all of the pieces needed to work because they didn't have an A player. It's okay to have a bunch of B's, but the B's need to take turns playing like an A. If that
and that's the thing. If you can keep a few of these B's, I really like some of these B's.
Right.
But they got to find a way to get in. I think Paul McNeil is going to be very good. I don't know if he can be your savior as a freshman. So can you go get a guy in the portal that is an A guy? And that's what I'm really intrigued to see, because I do really like Mo Diarra. Like Middlebrooks is kind of your backup big. Can you get an elite pick and roll player, especially with the offensive style that Kevin Keats plays?
Yeah. Nick's giving you some love here, but he also wants to point out
Thank you, Nick.
Now, in fairness to Scott, though, of course, Scott played like Scott set the school record for games played. Breon is obviously a reserve player. So,
and I'm not saying there's a lot like Terquavion. I saw a comment about there's a lot that can get it in 2 years. They choose to go a different route. I'm just for us to see somebody stay 4 years is going to be crazy to see.
Yeah. Here's Zach. This season really didn't have any games to get all that excited about. I agree with that. Last year had a bunch of fun performances and some great wins. This year was just kind of hard to enjoy as a fan. I agree. And ultimately, I think this is where Dave Doran was in a similar situation before beating Clemson twice in the last 3 years, where it was like, where are these great moments? Where is the ghost red uniforms? Where is the Sweet 16? Where's the roll pack, beating Duke? And I think if they had played Duke earlier in the season, they probably beat them, kind of like last year. And you get one where you can kind of put it in your back pocket. I thought BYU was the game this year that they needed to put in their back pocket. Ultimately, I think, as usual, I'll be proven right on that one. Just because out of the league, they just didn't have that many opportunities. So it was different. All right. So Chris says, imagine saying 4 years ago to all of us, your head coach will go 1-7 over the next 4 years in Q1 games that actually matter. We would have all exploded. Yeah. Real quick about Q1s and Q2s and Q3s and all those other things. I think what matters is what you do against the teams who are going to make the NCAA tournament. Ultimately, I think that's how you get into the tournament. You beat other teams. Scott was on a team that beat St. Bonaventure. You'll never convince me otherwise that win over St. Bonaventure. St. Bonaventure wins the A10 that year, and all of a sudden that becomes a quality win.
Now, last second shot.
Right. Now, it wasn't quads back then. But ultimately, I think the committee gets in a room and they look and they go, who's in the field? All right, who did you beat that we have in the field? So, yes, I statistically understand the Q1s. And I'm not trying to make an excuse for it. I'm just trying to tell you, like, the wins last year, I'm like really choking over here. Hang on. I'm saying the wins last year, you beat Carolina, you beat Duke. Ultimately, did they turn out to be Q1s? I mean, who knows? Obviously not, if you only have one of them. So, look, okay, some jobs with more. All right, we'll keep rolling here. Some jobs with more NIL will come calling. Oh, to Will Wade, I think. Yeah, I mean, listen, I think you can take Will Wade out of the equation here. I think that's a safe. For all of the reasons that we have explained, I think that's definitely all right. From Chuck, if he says, can we force a new offensive and defensive system? That's kind of the interesting thing to me is, you bottom out in 21, you bring in new ideas, which I thought was a really smart move in bringing in Levi Watkins. I thought that was great. And I think his staff is in a totally different position this time around. And ultimately, I don't think it'll be a new staff. I think ultimately it comes down to, can you figure out the NIL piece? There's some other Paul McNeil comments. He could stroke.
He's good. He's good. I've watched him multiple times. And again, a jump from high school to ACC is a different type of level. Terquavion, did it. I think I've told everybody, I think he's better than Terquavion. I think he's a less of a volume guy, more efficient. elite level shooter, but also capable to get what he wants off the bounce. Kind of going back to that question they said, I'm not a huge fan of the Kevin Keats offensive style. Someone called it playground, call it what you want. But I do think there is something to put the right guys in the right situations to find success. I think it's something that he's going to try to get his type of talent that he can use what he wants. But I think, especially if he is coming back, you gotta make a couple, alterations. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what you run as long as you put the ball in the basket.
All right, we got the Ollie fan. Since college sports are basically pro sports now, we have to look at it through the same lens. Don't disagree. You have to be able to sell hope or success, and right now we've got neither.
I said honestly, if I was a collegiate university outside of Woodson at IU, I think it makes sense to go get an NBA guy.
Really?
I think it has turned more into that style of basketball. I would have somebody on my bench now. For granted, they're not allowed to be involved with NIL,
sure.
But Duke has it. A GM. I'd have a GM that manages everything. You have X amount of dollars, and it's just like cap space. That is what college basketball is right now. And the people that figure that out the quickest and can make their bang go really far for their buck, they're gonna be all right.
Yeah, same here from okay. Yeah, this is a fair point. If you buy the puzzle but can't put the pieces together, that's all on the head coach. Listen, I think this roster, I liked the premise of what they were trying to do. I do think MJ Rice was supposed to be a big part of that. I know DJ Burns was supposed to be a bigger part of that. And you and I have talked about this, Scott. Your teammate, Richard Howell, lost 40 pounds from sophomore to junior year because he knew the only way for him to make money. Heck, I think even Mark told him, if you don't lose weight, I'm not going to put you on the team. He was motivated. I think with
yogurt
and all that, it showed.
No, I mean, I'll say this, man. I was there in the summertime. Every time I saw Murph, DJ Burns was with him. Now, again, how much effort he wants to put into doing that, but like even today, I said he had a phenomenal game offensively. But when he was in the game, they gave up 14 offensive rebounds in the first half, and putbacks. I mean, it's an absolute power struggle with them, and it's just hard to kind of balance, him being able to get a bucket whenever he wants, but then we're giving up everything on the other end. It's tough. And I will say the one thing I'll give Kevin kudos on, especially throughout the year, is he's done a good job of kind of that substitution, especially late game, when to know to get him out of there for a defensive substitution and an offensive substitution. Now, a lot of it depends on dead balls. But he has done a solid job at that.
All right, from Nathaniel, let's say he stays and makes the tournament next year. We're going to continue to hash the same conversation year in and year out. I think yes. And I think if he took the Georgetown job last year, I think if they had offered, I agree. I think that's probably one of his dream jobs was to take that job. So now, do I think Kevin's agent has the ability to get him another job? I think it's possible. Scott, I'm going to put up one question. I'm going to grab something to drink. It might have to be an alcoholic drink, but my throat, I'm really letting the people down. Here's a good one though. I'll let you talk. I'll pop the comment.
No, I think Nate would be a good one. I think the only thing is I had Sydney for 2 years. It didn't go as planned. I do think, again, I think that NBA route is the way that I would lean a little bit more. I think obviously having the alumni connection makes it a little bit stronger. There's a dedicated passion to, put NC State basketball where it needs to be. So it'll be, again, you're going to have one more with Kevin. I mean, that's just the reality of it. So I'd love to see it. Heck, it may be under an assistant role, but I'd love to see Nate. I've always said it. The more state alumni that I can see on that bench, makes me happy. Sometimes you look at a Carolina bench, you look at a Duke bench, and it's like, okay, why aren't we doing something like that? I think some type of I don't know, a player development role or something like that, almost like a trainer, having somebody that maybe just finished up playing professional basketball, or someone that just, like Torin. Torin was a good example of being there for a while. Those are the type of things I like to see. So I'd never turn down an alumni, one, to have the job, and two, be an assistant coach.
All right, my friend Mike makes a good point here, because I think it gets to where the fan base is, right? So how did State's admin go from basketball crazy to 4 coaching changes since 92, 32 years and 11 tournament berths, only one time with a higher seed than 8th? I think he's talking about basically NC State used to be a basketball school. I think even with Mark running hot, right, even in your years, you still had Duke and Carolina winning the national title, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like, okay, it's good. It's better than the current situation, but it's still not what it was, right? And I think that's where the frustration.
And look, I'm gonna go against everything Dave Doran says, this is a basketball school. This is, cutting the nets. This is ACC basketball. Has it, taken a step off of a ledge? Yes, but to me, it's always going to have 2 banners up there. It's always going to have David Thompson. It's always going to have the history of, Carolina and Duke for a very, very long time was a little brother in this rivalry. It is completely gone the other way. And Duke and Carolina going forward will always be a blue blood and will always be good, without a doubt. I also said today, and again, fans probably don't want to hear it, if you go 1-4 against Carolina, that's probably success now. Now, I think there are ways that State can turn this thing around and become a very good, formidable opponent. But you gotta slowly figure this out. But you also got to be realistic about it. It's not like we're going to be winning recruits against Carolina and Duke. But I've always said I think there's something to be said with getting those hardworking guys like a Mo Diarra, a Ben Middlebrooks, but you got to surround them with some really go-to guys as well to really win in the ACC. Do I think they're far off either? No, I don't. I really don't think they're far off. Like you said earlier today, I think they're an A player away from being, third in the ACC. Like, I was talking about this with Josh Goodson today. Do you know how many wins to get to 4th in the ACC is
this year?
Yeah, like to get to 4th, what do you think realistically it'll be?
13, 12,
11 or 12.
Yeah.
Wins. That's like 12-9 in the ACC. That by no means good, but you could be 4th in the ACC this year, 12-9, and they're close. They're close. They're 1A piece away.
All right, lots of comments about the system. Yeah, I mean, one thing I would say about the way that State plays, I think if you watch basketball, NBA, college, even Duke today, like. Whatever our thoughts are on John Shire, I mean, that Duke runs a lot of the same stuff that State does,
and that's I
think a lot of teams run the same stuff, right? I'm not saying Kevin doesn't need. I thought he punched up the playbook this year. By the way, some different stuff this year. I know
you're also limited with what DJ Burns can do. Let's be very clear.
Right. And
you're not moving him around to set pin downs. You're not moving him around to set up pick and roll 50 times a game, because you can only do so much with him.
Okay, you're right. Let's hit that one. I think this is who he's talking about. I love DJ, but no Elite 8 type team as a guy like that. Again, I think this gets back to if he shows up at 280 pounds, what he means is business. You know why he's there, just like Rich did his last 2 years. He showed up. He was breathing fucking fire. You knew what was going on. Again, I like DJ Burns. I do. He's very likable. But when you show up at 320 plus, you're not sitting here and saying to my teammates, I care about this. I have prioritized this. For all of the schematic reasons that you're pointing out. And I think Kevin has tried this year to make the best of that situation with Middlebrooks and Diarra. So when I say the roster construction, part of it was going into the offseason saying we can't have DJ on the floor in these defensive situations the way that he was kind of forced into last year. And also, quite frankly, when we talk about an A player, Jarkel Joyner was an A player. Jaquavion Smith was an A player. A players make other players better. That's why they're A players. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, for me, that's the hard part of it for all of this is, yes, everything is probably going to be a year-to-year proposition. Yes. Like, I don't, there's people like, are we going to have this conversation again next year? Even if it's not Kevin, I've got news for you. That's going to be, and you know what else is going to be part of the conversation? And I'm not saying bring him back because of Paul McNeil. And this gets back to Kevin not being able to get his best players here. You know who I keep watching this year? Who's really effing good? Rob Dillingham. Now, do I think that's a new NIL issue? Do I think Kentucky went to their bag deeper than State? Yes. Do I think Rob Dillingham had some love for Kentucky and wanted to go hold DJ Wagner's jock? No. How many shots would that freaking kid have here? He'd have everything he wants, but that's not what everybody wants. Everybody's a little bit different. So again, the primary criticism of Kevin is not having those best players that he's either signed or gotten to commit be able to come here and make a difference for NC State. That's the biggest problem.
And I think that's always, I think going forward for NC State, it's going to be an A player out of the transfer portal, not necessarily out of high school recruitment.
You got to pay more. Yes, Jonathan Rand, you are correct. NC State has been an 8th seed twice, higher than an 8th seed twice, a 7 in 02 and a 3 in 04. So did Herb Sendek have a better run than Keats? Yeah, I mean, Herb made the tournament his last 5 years, went to the Sweet 16 in 5, crashed out tremendously in 4 in a game that everyone now knows that listens to the podcast. I lost a significant amount of money on it. I've never bet on or against NC State since 2004. And also Herb made the final 97, 02, 03. So 3 times. Obviously the game in 03, I would argue to this day, if Herb wins, if JJ Redick doesn't go intergalactic in the second half of that game, if JJ Redick doesn't go Scott Wood in his front driveway where his dad made a 3-point line for him.
I didn't have a 3-point line.
Not in the driveway?
No, just a free throw line. We knew in the grass was the top of the key, so I knew if I shot from the grass, it was a 3 line. But I didn't have it.
I might need to get your dad on this program to tell my favorite Scott Wood story.
That might be. I will tell you, he'd be pretty hilarious, man. He's very serious as a dad, but I bet if somebody got him on this, he'd be. And you ask the right questions, he would not hold back.
No, I wrote about it your freshman year about how, I don't know if it was the state fair or just one of those shooting.
When I was 2, yeah.
And the guy was like, "Do you want to give him a chair?" He's like, "No, he doesn't need one of them." And then he was like, "Are you sure?" He's, "No, you don't have enough prizes."
Yeah, no, I mean, it was a good story, but he's got some stories now. I'll tell you that, especially about Indiana high school basketball. If I ever have a question about something, he would know. I know Mr. Peeler went back to Indiana because he's doing a story on like Everett Case and the Indiana basketball connection to NC State. My dad actually took him and showed him around Marion High School. Told him to go to Newcastle, which is the biggest Indiana attendance in the state. So he would be interesting to have on here. I will say that.
And just going through the comments again, this one, I'm not sure which DJ we're talking about. I do think one lesson learned this year was in NIL, you are better off with, again, buying an A player. I'm not sure which DJ this is referring to, C. Smith. because obviously you had to pay DJ Horn to get him here, and then obviously you paid DJ Burns to stay here. But neither would have commanded what Dillingham commanded on the open market. So that's part of it. But I wouldn't say it was mismanagement. I would only say you're making choices at that. Dillingham was pretty clear. What was it, from December of last year, or it was pretty early last year, that he had basically said, "Hey, Kentucky's paying me this. What am I going to do?" Right? I mean, let's just be honest here.
Some things you just can't compete with. So, especially if you're a 1-year loan player.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the other one as well. Let's see. We've got Keats only won those recruiting battles because every other coach worth their salt knew wasn't worth their time. Yeah, I mean, listen, I think Jalen LeCue, if we go back to the first None and Done, I think he was a guy who, it was fairly well known, it wasn't going to happen. Josh Hall, though, was, he was with Cam Hayes, and I'm going to insult the other guy. I can't remember the other guard's name. The one who was at Mississippi State. They were all
Shaquille
Moore. Yeah, they were all together. That was like a package deal type situation, and that was also a COVID casualty. Like, oh, don't go waste your 1 year of eligibility. You can go play in the G League or whatever he ended up doing, and that was even before like G League Ignite and all those other good things. So, from Adam, where would the program be if we got Calipari back in 2006? Does he coach an all-star? Does an all-star coach change the program or no? Okay, there's a good question. I think NC State's previous issues in attracting a coach, in Herb's search all the way back in 97, I think in Sid's search, which of course was Calipari, was the big prize, and then this, Mark, and then Kevin. I think all of the previous searches, the monster was Carolina and Duke. They had Hall of Fame coaches that you had to play, in some instances, 4 times a year. Good luck. I think that math has changed now to what exactly is the future of NC State and the ACC. That's a completely different dynamic. And I don't, if I'm an agent and I have a coach who, I have Abdul Rahim down in South Florida. I have Dusty May down at Florida Atlantic. Unless it's Duke or Carolina, I'm telling him, do not take an ACC job, period. I think Florida State's going to break this league in 2 years. I do not believe the ACC is going to exist. Now, where will NC State be? Now, the lawmakers of this state seem to think they're all powerful. I'm going to tell the lawmakers of this state, they're not as powerful as they think. Money talks, bullshit walks. Okay? That's how the world works. So you might sit here and think you have some sort of survivor bullshit pact. You don't. Okay? I'm just telling you that right now. So if you have this hot shit coach, how are you going to get him to go to take NC State's name out of it? How are you going to get him to go to an ACC school? We got to overpay. Well, now you're paying somebody $5 million to go away. Well, you're not exactly flush with cash as it is. Do you see the conundrum now? Financially, that's where is all-star coach. Maybe like Scott said, maybe there's a way you get an NBA guy. It's tough. I do not believe in the theory. Well, who are you going to get? I hate it when people say that. It is my least favorite thing that people say when talking about schools and coaching searches. Do you know what the job of the athletic director is? It's to hire coaches. Okay? That's their job. So that's what they're paid. We're getting close to millions to do. If that is your job, then you should be good at it. Okay? Don't give me, well, who are they going to get? I hate that. My last nerve. So I think the dynamic, Scott, as I've now curse sufficiently enough for everybody. I think
At least you're not choking anymore.
I'm not. I'm that the Coke is going to keep me awake. No, never. However many more hours. So, all right, let's see. A few more. We'll get out of here because a bunch of them have been pouring in here, and I appreciate everyone for checking in here. Yeah, there's some of that. That's on Keats for chasing guys that never wanted to play college ball. Can understand some of that. Yeah. Hey, you had some good ones there. Herb should have won the ACC tournament in 04. The infamous towel technical foul for the ball boy the manager washing up the drying up the court from Larry Rose. Yep. Randy hit that one. We can't. I'm not sure we can go down all these, right? Like Gott would still be here if Kendall Marshall in the worst call gets called for the push off instead of our guy Alex Johnson. So yeah, I mean, listen, this is a real one. Not enough investment in basketball. It's all about football now. I mean, I say this all the time about Bobby Purcell. They should have built a statue of the guy, the most successful fundraiser to ever do it. No medical school, no law school. You are competing against the richest schools there are when you don't have, there's only so much of Wendell's money to go around. Okay. As we've seen, as we're all learning. It's hard. So I don't know if it's quite investment. Now, this is where I would like Scott to see the ACC and Randy Woodson, who voted in the NCAA for the president, even though he was long past his point of being effective. This is where I would love to see NC State be a leader in college sports and help athletes become paid and share in the revenue. And I'm not talking about NIL. I'm talking about actually making them employees and sharing in the revenue. If you're the first mover on that, well, then you now would be ahead of the SEC and the Big Ten. Unfortunately, Randy Woodson has completely lacked that foresight. And I think it has cost NC State. I think it has cost the ACC that they've all kind of followed this Wake Forest, shucks, let's do it for the good of, 1958. Okay. Breaking news, 1958 wasn't that great either. So, Scott, you've had enough, or what do we got?
No, if you've got a couple more questions that look decent, we can take them. I mean, it seems like there's a pretty good turnout.
All right.
You understand all this technology better than I do anyway.
This guy, Duke murdered State. Yeah, I mean, well, all right. There's some boo thoughts. Yeah, I mean, it's too late for this one. I remember he was a candidate when Les Robinson.
What about you got Junior sitting there?
Oh, his son?
Yeah.
He's got to be in line to take over for his dad at Houston, right? Houston's got a real kick at this thing.
Yeah.
The Miller family. Sean Miller. Yeah, sure. Debbie's first choice in 11, but he had other ideas at Arizona. So I get that. I think Ohio State probably has a real look on that. So
I heard I think they mentioned the guy from FAU today. I saw
Dusty May.
Yeah, my guy Jeff Goodman.
Oh, really?
Said that he thinks that's where he's going.
Interesting. Well, that was my guy from 2 years ago because Dusty May works for one of Kevin White's kids at FAU, is the AD. Kevin White, if you don't know, all of the Triangle ADs and anyone who's ever worked for him at Notre Dame absolutely revere him. And, there has to be a Notre Dame connection with like everything that happens, right? And when in doubt, there has to be this Notre Dame tie-in. And I think you'll see now in 11 when they had I think Shaka Smart would have been great at State. Apologies to you if, I know how you feel about the guy, man, but I think Shaka was absolutely the right coach to hire. And in the twist of NC State shit, of course, the guy goes from the first four to the freaking Final Four. Are you kidding me? Like, the odds of that, certainly at the time, it hadn't been done, right? So, yeah, man, I'm just saying, it's a completely different dynamic right now, and financially is, it's part of it. Now, there's some ties. The Miller brothers, Archie, obviously not doing great at Rhode Island, but
I've got some kids on my AU team for them, though. I might send them a couple.
I mean, I think Archie is looking at Danny Hurley and going, well, where did I go wrong? That's what he's doing right now. If you don't know, Archie's dad, tremendous high school coach in Pennsylvania.
I got a question.
Yeah.
Can you block people in here?
Not sure. Was somebody not being nice?
Somebody said, give me Gary Williams.
Oh, yeah. You hate Gary. I love Gary, though.
No, he's all right. I just can't. I can't deal with Maryland, period. I always thought he looked like the turtle.
You know how that goes. you know my thoughts on yeah. All right. Well, yeah, I got to give a little love here. You're right, Joe. The next generation of NC State sports should rely on our tech grads instead of ag. Wolf Speed, hello. Yeah. It also another twist of NC State shit that the guy who's the richest guy in the triangle is a state grad and does not care about sports, period. So sometimes that is how the cookie crumbles. All right. We've done this successfully. I'm not sure. Yeah. See, no, this is what you're thinking. UNC Board of Governors will force UNC to the Big Ten so that the SEC. Yeah. Listen. Yeah, I'm not going to get into the fantasy conference realignments. I said my piece about what I think of as actually going to happen there. So we will see. Again, appreciate everyone for checking us out tonight. 79-64. NC State loses to Duke. They now will finish the season at Pitt. We'll be up in DC. Might be calling on you, Scott Wood, to join us for some of these after dark ventures. If you haven't done so already, hit that little subscribe button, and you can listen to the podcast, Apple, Spotify, the Googles, all those things, and you can tune in tomorrow 2 p.m. on the OG for more thoughts on Wolfpack basketball. Appreciate you guys. See you soon.